I pressed my palm to the bedroom door while my left arm went numb, and my son on the other side said, "You're fine, Dad. Go back to bed." The old brass latch clicked like a seal over my heartbeat. My phone, my lifeline, wasn't in my pocket. He'd slipped it into his hoodie, the way a magician pockets a coin and smiles while you drown. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. It was Tuesday, November 18th, in Parma, Ohio. Wind off Lake Erie rattled the vinyl siding as if the house itself had a cough. The digital clock on my dresser read 10:47 p.m., the exact minute Aaron usually called to check on me. Tonight, he had checked in person and decided I didn't need help. I did what men my age do when pain argues with pride. I breathed through my teeth and watched the shadows on the ceiling until the heavy hand on my chest loosened to a grip. There was a crumpled paper on the dresser. 2,840 for an emergency contractor, circled in black ink. Not my handwriting, not my emergency. Earlier, Aaron had set it down with the casual confidence of a man placing a coaster. Just some work that had to be done, he'd said, already moving toward the mail. He'd spread my envelopes out like playing cards, lifted the ones that mattered. Bank statements. The pharmacy printout for my lisinopril dated Nov 17, and slid my phone into his pocket without breaking eye contact. "You shouldn't always hold on to things," he'd said. "You taught me that." I had, only I meant grudges, not lifelines. I knocked once on the door. "Call an ambulance," he answered through wood. "You're scared. Sit down. Drink water." The oven timer dinged in the kitchen at the same second, an absurd little bell announcing nothing but heat. I stared at Margaret's photo on the dresser. My wife had been gone 3 years, but she still watched me from that frame, the way she used to watch numbers when a bill didn't balance. This house, paid off the year she died, was my retirement. Every receipt in the drawer beside her photo was my pension. And a strange thought arrived with the pain. My son had started counting those things like chips on a table. I moved to the window. Aaron's taillights idled in the driveway, exhaust puffing a steady, patient ghost. If he truly believed I was fine, why keep the engine warm? The pressure in my chest eased by inches. Sweat cooled on my neck. Time sagged. I memorized everything because memory was all I had left. The clock at 11:12, flashing its thin red numerals. The orange cleaner smell he preferred over my lemon one. The faint scrape of metal, like he was trying a key in a lock that shouldn't need trying. At 11:26, the latch lifted. He stepped in with a smile he'd practiced somewhere. "See, you're okay." He handed me a glass of water and set it exactly on the ring his last glass had left on my nightstand, as if to stack proof. "You scared me," he added, performing concern like a man reading a script with the stage manager off to the right. I nodded, took the glass, and pretended to swallow. My hand shook, but my voice found a level floor. "I'll talk to the doctor tomorrow," I said. "Good," he answered. "I'll handle your meds." He patted the pocket where my phone lay like a stunned bird. "You don't need this when you're resting." I watched him walk down the hall, his shoes silent, the house recognizing his weight the way old wood recognizes rain. When the front door closed and the engine faded, I sat back against the headboard and took my pulse the way the nurse showed me after my last checkup. 68. Steady, stubborn. I looked at Margaret's photo again, and at the 2,840 bill someone called an emergency. The emergency was breathing in me. The emergency had my last name. I turned on the bedside lamp and wrote the first line of what would become my ledger on the backs of 2 envelopes. Nov 18, 10:47 to 11:26 p.m. Aaron locked the door, took my phone, ignored request for ambulance, then I underlined the date. If my heart kept morning tasted like metal, I didn't hear my alarm. I heard the kettle scream. It was November 19th, Wednesday, the kind of gray Cleveland sky that makes the backyard maple look like it's holding its breath. I sat at the kitchen table without pouring the water, watching the steam curl and vanish over the sink. My chest felt bruised in the shape of a handprint. The orange cleaner Aaron favored hung in the air, too sharp, too new, like a hotel room where you're the only person who doesn't belong. I keep my pharmacy slips in a ceramic dish Margaret bought at a church sale. The top one said CVS, Lisinopril, Nov, 17. The signature line had my name, but not my handwriting. Aaron always made the B in our last name look like a snowman. He had picked up my blood pressure pills to help. I traced a fingertip over the date and felt stupid for letting a favor lean into control. My house is my retirement. Every slip of paper in this kitchen is my pension. You don't hand your pension to a man who pockets your phone. The front door camera blinked its little red eye at me from the hallway. The SD card was still inside. I told myself I'd look later, not yet. If the clip showed what I knew it showed, Aaron arriving at 10:31 p.m., hands on the mail, phone disappearing, then I'd have proof he did what he did. If it didn't, well, that was a different kind of pain. The landline sat on the wall like an old soldier. I pressed the button for voicemail. My voice from last night filled the kitchen, thin and papery. Please call someone. The silence after it was worse than the plea. He'd been on the other side of the door with my phone, and he still didn't pick up. I hung up hard enough to rattle the cradle, and then apologized to wood and wires like they could feel sorry for me. There's a special kind of shame. Old men know, the kind that comes when you realize the person you love most has memorized the places where you're soft. After Margaret died, I told myself I'd keep our boy close. Grief isn't tidy. It doesn't fold itself into a drawer. So I made things easy. I put Aaron on my checking account because he said online banking confused me. I gave him a spare key because he promised to visit more. I let him carry my phone sometimes because the buttons were small and my hands were tired. Each decision looked like love in the moment. Together, they looked like a map to the vault. I stood and opened the drawer beside the stove, the one with rubber bands, a tape measure, Margaret's recipe cards, and my life. I spread out the bills until I found the crumpled one he'd tossed down, $2,840 for emergency contractor services. I read the line items twice. Assessment, urgent remediation, priority call-out, no company letterhead. Just a local number and a total written in heavy black ink. Emergency for whom? Not me. Certainly not last night. At 9:40 a.m., I opened the laptop and typed Cuyahoga County Probate Court hours. I wrote the hours on a sticky note as if writing them made me braver. Then I closed the laptop because the thought of walking into a courthouse to talk about my living son felt like treason. A father's loyalty should not have to learn new rules in his 60s. I put the sticky note under the sugar bowl and told myself it was just information, not a vow. I moved room to room. In the hallway, the front door camera watched me back. In the bedroom, Margaret's picture frame leaned slightly left. I straightened it. The ring of water on the nightstand from last night looked like a target. I wiped it. The house sounded different in daylight. The chimes outside ticked rather than sang. The furnace clicked with a tired determination that made me think of my own heart. At 11:02 a.m., the exact time of last night's voicemail, because that number branded itself on me, I called my primary care office. The receptionist sounded kind and far away. She could squeeze me in Friday morning. If you have chest pain again, call 911, she said. Don't wait, I thanked her and promised. I didn't say that I had asked someone else to call for me, and he had chosen not to. The phone rang at 11:27. Aaron. How you feeling, old man? I'm all right, I said, because fathers lie when they need time to think. Last night was rough. You scared me, he said, and I could hear him smiling into whatever mirror he uses for practice. I checked your pills. You missed a dose last week. I'll organize the box for you. My pills are fine, I said. I'll handle them. A pause. You sound defensive. I sound like a man who knows where his phone is supposed to be, I answered. My voice surprised me. It had bones in it. He sighed in a way that said I was being unreasonable. I was helping. You don't need to clutch that thing 24/7. It's not good for your blood pressure. You'll be happy to know I wrote that down, I said, steady now. Everything important gets written down. He laughed short. Okay, Dad, love you. Love you, I said, and I meant it, and the meaning didn't save either of us. After we hung up, I took a pen and turned 2 envelopes into a ledger page. Nov 19, kettle screamed, didn't drink. CVS slip dated Nov 17, picked up by Aaron, voicemail proof. Probate court hours on sticky note. The sound of writing calmed me. Words in a row can hold a man up when he can't quite stand by himself. At 2:15 p.m., I opened the laptop again. I typed power of attorney elder abuse, and then deleted abuse, because the word felt like a hammer in my mouth. I typed elder law attorney Parma, and made a list of 3 names. Ms. Price's website said she'd been an assistant prosecutor, and that she hates bullies. That line tugged at me like a sleeve. I closed the laptop again. Not yet. I needed one night of sleep that didn't taste like fear. In the late afternoon, I stood at the sink and watched a neighbor's flag hang without wind. I folded the 2,140 bill twice and slid it into my wallet where my union card used to go. A private ceremony I can't explain, except to say it felt like putting a hand on a steering wheel. When I opened the freezer to take out ground beef for dinner, I saw the turkey Margaret always bought myself just in case, and I smiled at my own habit of keeping traditions I claim to hate. As evening came, the wind returned, and the chimes tapped the porch rail in little code knocks. I pulled a chair to the kitchen table and set out what mattered: the pharmacy slip, the bill, a blank notepad, and a pen that still had weight. I pressed the pen to the paper and made a rule for myself in Margaret's looping style. If my heart doesn't fail me, my memory won't either. I looked at the front door camera one last time and finally reached for it. I didn't watch the clip, not yet. I pressed the SD card in, heard the click, and placed the camera on the table like a guest. Tomorrow, I told it. Tomorrow we tell the truth in order. I turned off the kettle, poured the water I should have poured hours ago, and let it cool. Tonight I would sleep with a notepad on the nightstand. Tomorrow I would walk 2 blocks to Janelle's house with the SD card in my pocket and my pride tucked where it wouldn't get in the way. The next morning, Thursday, November 20th, Parma looked like November always does. Tired leaves clinging to branches. Sky the color of old dishwater. Air cold enough to make your breath feel like a reminder. I tucked the SD card into my shirt pocket and walked the 2 blocks to Janelle's. My knee clicked the whole way, a little metronome reminding me that age isn't weakness, it's record-keeping. Janelle opened her door in scrubs, hair in a tight bun, coffee in hand. She took one look at me and stepped aside without a word. Nurses know the look of a man carrying more than evidence. What happened? She asked as we sat at her kitchen table. I told her everything. Not in the dramatic way I heard it in my head at night, but quietly, like reading a label you hope is wrong. Locked door. Chest pain. Phone gone. Call an ambulance. Silence. She didn't interrupt. She just wrote in a little spiral notebook, neat nurse handwriting, date, time, exact words. When I finished, she tapped her pen twice and said, "That's not caregiving. That's control." I handed her the SD card. She popped it into her laptop like she was disarming a bomb. The video flickered on, grainy night footage from my porch. There he was, 10:31 p.m., hoodie, mail in one hand. My phone disappearing into his pocket like it belonged there. He glanced up once toward the camera, like a man checking for traffic before running a red light. Janelle exhaled hard. "That is not care," she repeated. "That's intent." She dug through a drawer and pulled out a thumb drive, still in plastic. "Copy everything. Never rely on one copy." We saved the footage. She labeled the drive Nov Home. When she wrote the date, she underlined it twice. Nurses don't play around with timelines. Then she opened her notebook again. "You need legal," she said, "and medical documentation. I'll type a statement tonight." She wrote down her RN license number, date, time, and witness to verbal report of chest pain incident. Then she added, almost to herself, "and locked in room." "Do I sound crazy?" I asked. "You sound scared," she said. "Scared is not crazy. Scared is honest." I walked to the bus stop at 3:30 p.m. Cold wind cut through my coat. I looked like a man going to the grocery store, not to restart his life. The law office sat between a vape shop and a nail salon. The sign said, "Price and Klein, Elder Law." Inside smelled like winter coats and copy toner. Miss Price walked out herself, charcoal blazer, steel hair clip, eyes that missed nothing. She shook my hand once, firm and nodded at a chair. "Tell me," I did. "Slower this time." I slid the 2,840 contractor bill across her desk. I showed her the pharmacy slip dated Novi 17 with the snowman B. I showed her the sticky note with the probate hours. Then I told her about the phone, the door, the chest pain. Not dramatic, just the way it happened. She didn't flinch. "Do you have proof?" "I have memory," I said, "and a voicemail, and a camera. Memory is good. Paper is better. Video is best." She tapped her pen twice, Janelle's rhythm. "Assets?" "House paid off, assessed at 699,842. Savings around 42,000. Pension 1,986 a month. No debt, and your son?" "Gambling. Crypto losses. Good heart once." My voice cracked on the last word. She didn't look away. "Did he have you sign anything recently?" "A temporary medical POA in September," I said. "Dental surgery month." She leaned back, jaw set. "Temporary POAs are the favorite playground of adult children who get impatient. We're going to freeze authority, request an emergency review, and file for a protective order. Then we rekey your home, audit accounts, and serve him when it will sting most." "When?" "Thanksgiving week." She smiled without warmth. "Holiday timing forces honesty." She slid a retainer agreement across the desk. $1,500, I wrote a check. My hand shook only a little. "I'll need proof," she said. I tapped my chest pocket. "I kept the receipts." She pushed a sticky note toward me, a list in tidy block letters. "Rekey locks, make a second copy of footage. ER records from Nov, 18. Bank visit, stop unauthorized transfers, certified letter revoking access." "You'll walk this line," she said. "You don't have to like it. You just have to not fall off." Outside, streetlights flicked on like tired eyes. I took the bus home and held the thumb drive in my pocket like a stone from a beach you never want to forget. When I got inside, the house felt alert. Not safe yet, but awake. I laid everything on the dining table like evidence in a quiet trial. Contractor bill, CVS slip, notebook page, sticky notes. Margaret's chimes outside tapped the glass door softly, like she was checking in. I wrote one more thing in my ledger envelope. Nov 20, nurse saw video. Lawyer hired. Thanksgiving plan. I'm not alone. I slid the SD card and thumb drive into a glasses case and put it under the mattress like a boy hiding treasure. Then I sat in the living room chair Margaret loved and listened to the furnace breathe. Tomorrow, locks. Tomorrow, paper. Tonight, breath. Tonight, a man deciding he'd rather fight than fade. Sunday, November 23rd. The morning air had that sharp Cleveland bite that wakes you up even before coffee does. I stood on my porch with my hands in my pockets, scanning the quiet street like a man expecting trouble, but hoping for peace. The locksmith's van rolled up at 9:10 a.m., white Ford with a faded decal, a cross hanging from the rearview mirror, and a burly man named Pete stepping out with a tool bag and a thermos. "You the Riki?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Front door and—" I hesitated, swallowing the humiliation. "Bedroom 2, he didn't ask why, just nodded like he'd seen enough life to know every lock has a story behind it. As he worked, the drill buzzed through the old brass cylinder, a sound like cutting ties. Metal shavings sprinkled on the porch like winter confetti. I watched each piece fall, as if they were the last remains of trust I'd given freely. When he finished, he scribbled the total on a carbon copy slip, $186 in blue ink. Date at the top, 11/23. He handed me 3 new brass keys inside a Ziploc bag. "The kind you'd use for leftover turkey. Keep one hidden," he advised. "I will." I put one in my pocket, one in the drawer by the stove, and later one into Janelle's palm. She closed her fingers around it like it was a duty, not metal. "I'll check in every day," she said. No hero routine. Around noon, Uncle Rob arrived with a folder under his arm and 2 coffees. He whistled low when I showed him the new locks. "Hell of a world when a man has to do this to feel safe in his own home," he muttered. We sat at the kitchen table, that same knot of grief and anger between us, like a third person. He spread out the ER discharge papers from November 18th. My name, blood pressure readings, troponin normal, observation time. I pointed to the timestamp, 11:02 p.m. That's when I called my own voicemail, I said. I slid a small notepad over to him where I had written the time side by side. He shook his head. You could have died, he said quietly. And he gambled it. We highlighted the dates, tucked the papers into a clear plastic sleeve. Paper becomes armor if you stack it right. At 2:47 p.m., Ms. Price's assistant scanned every document we had so far. 2,140 contractor bill. CVS slip dated November 17 with the Snowman B ER discharge forms. My checkbook showing Aaron's name as joint. And a printout of the voicemail transcript. She moved with the efficiency of someone who had seen too. Many older folks betrayed by blood relatives and decided she would fight that. Fight every day. She punched the clock. Ms. Price reviewed the protective order draft and motion to suspend Aaron's POA. We filed December 2nd, she said. We land right before Judge Morales. She hates sloppy affidavits and loves timeline clarity. And we're going to give her both. She printed a phrase on top of the file, undue influence to be proven. Then she looked at me over her glasses. You ready for your Thanksgiving to be about truth, not turkey? I exhaled. Margaret always liked truth more than turkey anyway. That earned me the smallest nod. Back home, I wrote a letter telling Aaron he was not to enter my home without me present. No anger, no threats. Just boundary in black ink. Love doesn't mean access, I murmured as I sealed it. I mailed it certified. 2 days later, the green return card would come back with a messy signature, a little scribble of guilt, dated Nov 25. Evidence doesn't need to shout to be powerful. Sometimes a sloppy scrawl is enough. Late afternoon, P.I. Reed texted, got a lead. Coffee shop on Ridge Road. He's showing your porch pic to a guy in a suit. Looks like a flipper. Trying for a private sale. He attached a blurry photo. Aaron leaning forward, pointing to my house on his phone. My heart didn't skip a beat this time. It clenched into something sharper. Rage is heat. Resolve is steel. Get me something clearer, I typed. On it, he replied. That night I placed the new front door key under my pillow. Not out of fear, out of ceremony. A key is more than metal. It is permission. And I was taking mine back. I wrote in my ledger envelope, Nov 23, locks changed. 186 ER records printed, legal filings prepped, letter mailed. Son seen discussing house. Resolve firm. Then I shut off the light and sat in the quiet. The furnace hummed. The house breathed in its old bones. And I thought of Margaret. I'm taking care of it, I whispered. The wind outside answered, tapping the chimes like knuckles on a door. Not a warning, a promise. Thanksgiving week always used to mean warmth in this house. Pies cooling, football humming in the background, Margaret humming louder. This year, November 27th arrived carrying a different sound, the soft click of my pen against paper and the low hum of determination. I woke early and brewed coffee strong enough to stand up by itself. The yard outside was frosted silver. Lake Erie's breath had reached all the way into my block. I sat at the kitchen table and sorted my growing pile of proof like a priest preparing communion. CVS slip, ER papers, 240 contractor bill, locksmith receipt, and the spiral notebook Janelle gave me. Evidence of love turned into caution, and caution turned into defense. At 9:30 a.m., Janelle stopped by to sign her formal statement. She wore a thick scarf and still smelled faintly of disinfectant from her shift. She wrote her name cleanly, added her RN license number, and dated it, 11/27. Then she slid the page back to me with a firm push. No guilt, she said. Documentation isn't betrayal. It's oxygen. I swallowed and nodded. She squeezed my shoulder once and left. Around noon, Uncle Rob came with deli sandwiches. He spread his bank statements on the table like a poker hand. Last night I went through your joint account, he said, voice low. Something ugly there. He pointed to a scheduled automatic withdrawal set for December 1st, $9,500 tagged as care expense. Care expense, I repeated. Care. We went straight to the bank. The branch manager, a young man with two shiny hair and a sympathy reflex older than he was, listened with wide eyes. He printed the pending transfer. The paper was warm when he handed it to me, heat from the machine, not empathy. He helped file a stop payment order and flagged the transaction as suspicious. The last page printed with a satisfying clunk. I folded it once and slipped it into my wallet next to the contractor bill. My pension doesn't stretch to indulgence, but justice costs what it costs. At 5:18 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was P.I. Reed. Picture text received. 5:18 p.m., 2 photos. Clear, daytime, Ridge Road coffee shop. Aaron sitting across from a man in a Carhartt jacket, holding my contractor bill. The number 2240 circled bold in ink, and my address visible. Reed's caption, got him pitching a quick sale. Dad's going downhill fast. His words. Then a second screenshot, text forwarded from Reed's source. If your old man's gonna need a facility, we can do 520K fast. My chest didn't seize this time. It lit. Anger sharpens a man faster than fear ever did. My house, my retirement was being measured before I was even cold. I stood in the kitchen and let the moment settle. Margaret's chimes outside jingled in a cold gust, like encouragement through glass. I whispered, not today, not ever. I pulled a turkey from the fridge to thaw, not because I needed it, but because I refused to let him steal Thanksgiving too. I set 2 plates on the counter. Mine, and the traditional extra one Margaret always left, in case someone needed a seat. The phone buzzed again. Aaron, happy Thanksgiving tomorrow, old man. I'm stopping by in the morning. I replied slowly, each word measured. We'll be at Uncle Rob's at 2. Do not come here alone. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji. Coward's punctuation. I gathered my documents and placed them into a manila folder. On the tab, I wrote in pencil, no evidence. Under it, I tucked the stop payment form, Reed's photos, the CVS slip, the contractor bill, and the ER discharge. Then I added the green certified mail return card from the letter I'd mailed. His messy signature. Dated Nov 25. It looked like guilt had handwriting. Evening dragged in the way winter evenings do, dark by 5, quiet like a held breath. I walked to the porch and touched the wind chimes Margaret bought when Aaron was 10. They jingled, fragile and stubborn. I whispered, hear me, love. I'm holding the line. Inside, I turned off the lights, sat in the living room with my evidence folder in my lap, and listened to the furnace kick on. Tomorrow would be turkey and truth, but not in my kitchen, not under my roof. I locked the new deadbolt, set the folder beside me, and breathed. The storm wasn't coming. It had already started, and this time I wasn't bracing. I was ready. Thanksgiving morning, Friday, November 28th. A holiday meant for gratitude. But my house felt like a courtroom holding its breath. I woke early, not to baste a turkey, but to brace for a son who wasn't coming for family. He was coming for position. I brewed coffee, set Margaret's chimes gently swinging with my fingertips, and placed my phone beside the digital recorder Janelle had loaned me. A recorder is a strange comfort, small, plastic, unblinking truth. At 10:06 a.m., gravel crunched on my driveway. I didn't have to look. I knew his car, knew the rhythm of his footsteps on my porch boards, used to think it sounded like love coming home. Now it sounded like entitlement on 2 feet. His key scratched at the deadbolt twice, a metallic stutter of surprise and irritation. Then a text lit up my phone. Aaron, key changed? I typed, per my lawyer, 10 seconds. Then let me help with your meds. He always said it like control. Not care. I clicked the recorder on and spoke aloud, calm, flat, factual. You locked me in my room Tuesday night and took my phone during chest pain. My voice barely trembled. The recorder loves calm. Calm sinks knives deeper. Another text. Aaron, you're dramatic. I read it slowly into the recorder. He texted, you're dramatic. Timestamp Thanksgiving morning. Through the blinds, I watched him stare at the door like he expected it to apologize. He left without knocking. No happy Thanksgiving, no concern. Just frustration at a lock he no longer controlled. He sped off. I felt not victorious, just awake. I gathered the manila folder labeled Nav Evidence, tucked the recorder beside it, and drove to Uncle Rob's. Uncle Rob's place smelled like stuffing and bourbon, and the kind of home where people speak their hearts without betrayal, hiding in the corners. The TV murmured football, and the fireplace crackled low. The world outside that house had sharp edges. Inside, it felt padded again. At 1:58 p.m., the front door opened. Aaron entered carrying a store-bought pie. Plastic lid fogged, expiration sticker crooked. His smile was bright enough to fool strangers, but I knew the crack in it. Saw it last night in the Ridge Road photos. Heard it when his flipper friend texted him a $520K facility deal. He set the pie near the oven timer. Like muscle memory. Like he wanted me to hear that ding again in my bones. Janelle slipped in quietly 10 minutes after him, coat still zipped. She nodded to me. Neutral face. Nurse eyes. She sat across from Aaron, crossing her ankles like she had all day to wait for truth to walk in. We passed potatoes, carved turkey, clinked glasses. Aaron talked about work, something about a real estate investor opportunity. I nearly laughed. But instead I sipped water and watched the timeline assemble itself like a puzzle only I could see. Then he said it. Soft, practiced. Dad, after the scare, I've been thinking, maybe it's time for a place with more care. Uncle Rob froze mid-bite. He needs care like I need ballet slippers. Aaron chuckled like that was a joke. But his eyes flicked to me. He was testing the air, gauging whether I'd crumble in front of witnesses. He thought Thanksgiving would be a stage for his concern. Performance. He didn't know I'd already bought the tickets for a bigger theater. I opened my mouth, truth at my teeth, ready to lay down the footage. The bill, the voicemail, the bank attempt, the Ridge Road photos, but my phone buzzed. A vibration against my thigh like a hand on my wrist, saying not yet. Ms. Price, hold it. Bigger stage, deck 9. Today, gather. So I shut my mouth, swallowed it whole, and let him talk. Let him brag about plans for the house someday. Let him pat my shoulder like a child, humoring a fragile parent. Let him believe I was still the tired man from Tuesday night. While he chewed a forkful of mashed potatoes, I quietly snapped a photo of the pie next to the oven timer. His positioning wasn't random. Abusers have rituals, too. Later, while he wasn't looking, I checked metadata on his phone selfie from earlier, 10:12 a.m. taken in my kitchen. Proof he'd been inside trying that deadbolt. Scratches on the brass. He'd taken another crack at entry. I whispered it into the recorder later. Attempted access Thanksgiving morning. Locked out, documented. Dinner ended. Plates clinked. Laughter tried its best to be real, and I didn't confront him. I didn't accuse. I didn't raise my voice. I let silence do something more powerful than yelling ever could. I let him think he was still winning, because some battles aren't meant for dining rooms. Some battles need judges, transcripts, and raised right hands. As he left, pie container empty, I hugged him lightly. Just enough to feel the phone in his jacket pocket. Just enough to let him believe the performance was still working. He whispered, "I've got your back, Dad." And I whispered, "I know. I'll see you soon." The truth was already loaded. I didn't need to fire it across a dinner table. I had a courtroom waiting. Outside, the air bit my cheeks. I touched Margaret's old scarf around my neck and breathed out. The storm wasn't building anymore. It had a date, a docket, a judge, December 9th. And my son had no idea that Thanksgiving was his last comfortable meal before justice pulled up a chair next to him. December 9th, 9:00 a.m., Parma Justice Center. Room 3B, the kind of morning where the air freezes before you breathe it, and your nerves freeze right with it. I stood in the hallway holding my manila folder, NOV evidence, like a life vest. Inside it lived my survival, photocopies, handwritten times, tiny squares of truth. Janelle stood beside me in her navy scrubs, her badge clipped neat, hair tight, posture straight as a flagpole. Uncle Rob leaned against the wall, coffee in one hand and a jaw clenched tight enough to crack ice. He nodded at me once, the same nod he gave Margaret the day we buried her. We don't fall apart, we hold. Miss Price arrived next, charcoal suit, hair pinned sharp enough to cut through a lie. She didn't say good morning. She just said, "Remember, no speeches. We bring documents. We bring timestamps. We let truth speak. Confident men don't shout," I nodded. My throat felt tight, but my spine felt solid. When our case was called, the courtroom surprised me. Not grand, not dramatic. Just wood benches, humming radiator, fluorescent lights, a judge with reading glasses hanging on a chain. But that room held more weight than any church I'd ever stood in. Because this wasn't just a building. This was the place where my son's intentions were going to be peeled open like a rotten board. Judge Morales took her seat. Hair in a grey bun, glasses halfway down her nose. The face of someone who had given up caring what people thought, and now only cared what they could prove. Then Aaron walked in. He wore a blazer he'd never afford, without a credit card bill attached to it. Navy, slim cut, worn to look respectable. Except he wasn't looking at me. He stared at the judge first, then my lawyer, like a man checking the weather. He didn't meet my eyes. That hurt more than if he had come in spitting rage. Disappointment feels colder than hate. His attorney spoke first, some man with a slick haircut and a tie too shiny for morning court. Your Honor, my client has acted only out of concern. His father is elderly, on blood pressure medication, lives alone. He has been trying, selflessly, to provide supervision and necessary arrangements, selflessly. The word dropped like a coin in a wishing well, pretty, meaningless, sinking fast. Ms. Price didn't stand. She simply slid a binder forward. We'd like to begin with Exhibit A. She nodded toward the overhead screen. The screen flickered, then froze on a front porch at night. Wind moving through motion lights. And there he was, Aaron, my boy. 10:31 p.m., hand-cupping my mail like he was picking lottery numbers. Then my phone sliding into his hoodie pocket, smooth as a lie. Ms. Price paused the frame right as he glanced at the camera. Casual as a man flipping a coin, not knowing someone else would collect it later. Then she hit play again. No sound. Just the clip of him walking inside, door closing. And no phone coming back out. The courtroom was silent. The kind of silence where even the radiator seemed to hold its breath. She didn't narrate. She didn't theatricalize it. She just let truth breathe. Then she pressed a button and my recorded voicemail played. Please, please call someone. You could hear age in that voice. Fear, hope, and then nothing. Silence so heavy the judge's pen paused midair. Janelle took the stand next. She spoke calm, steady, the way she probably tells families hard things every day in hospital rooms. He told me he took his father's phone. His father reported chest pain and asked for emergency services. He did not respond. If someone did that in a hospital, they would be dismissed immediately. No melodrama, just standards. Then Uncle Rob, holding the bank's stop payment form up like a church offering, scheduled $9,500 withdrawal labeled care expense. No authorization. No care. His voice cracked once, only once. Then it turned to iron again. The room shifted. When truth stacks right, it stops being paper. It becomes a wall. Aaron's attorney stood again, voice sharp. This is all misunderstanding. Holiday stress. Family tension. Play the recording, Judge Morales said, not looking up. Ms. Price pressed play on the digital recorder clip from Thanksgiving morning. My voice calm. You locked me in my room Tuesday night and took my phone during chest pain. Then Aaron's text. You're dramatic. The judge leaned back. Hands folded like a teacher waiting for a student to realize their answer was wrong. Aaron, she said quietly, did you take your father's phone during a medical event? He swallowed. I thought he was exaggerating. There it was. Not denial, not apology. Excuse the worst kind of confession. Judge Morales's face didn't move. But her voice sharpened. You do not get to gamble with a human life and call it concern. She picked up her pen and wrote, Order entered, POA suspended. Temporary protective order granted. Exclusive possession of residence to me. Financial oversight. Follow-up hearing. December 16th for permanent orders and attorney fees. Aaron finally looked at me then. But it wasn't love or remorse. It was calculation failing. And nothing looks smaller than a person who planned control and finds only consequences. As we walked out, the courtroom door whispered shut behind us. I didn't feel triumph. I felt breath. Real breath. The kind a man gets when someone stops sitting on his chest. Outside in the cold, the wind lifted Margaret's scarf around my collar. Janelle squeezed my arm. Uncle Rob slapped my back once, gentle. Miss Price simply said, "Round 1, I nodded. December 16th was coming. And this time, he would know exactly who was walking in. Not a frail father. Not a man waiting to be saved. A man who chose paper over fear. Memory over shame. Justice over blood loyalty. And who finally understood. Love is not the same as access. And children are not owed what they tried to steal. December 10th to December 16th felt like walking a tightrope in slow motion. Each day a step, each night a long stare at the ceiling, making sure my heart stayed steady enough to reach the other side. The morning after court, the house was quiet in a new way, not the fragile quiet of fear, but the grounded quiet of recovery. The locks gleamed like little brass soldiers. The manila folder sat on the kitchen table, open like a Bible after a sermon. For the first time in weeks I made eggs, salted them lightly, ate them without feeling watched. At noon, Ms. Price called. Paperwork filed. Adult Protective Services notified. Bank oversight order issued. Her voice was crisp, calm. The kind of tone that made you believe rules can still hold bad people accountable. "Thank you," I said. "This is what you pay me for," she answered. "And what I enjoy." I could hear her typing, keys striking like little gavels. "Next hearing on the 16th, she reminded me. "He will try to pivot. Stay steady, steady." I could do steady. Steady is the backbone of every man who ever worked a shop floor and kept his fingers. Later that day, Reed texted. He went back to the flipper. Alone this time. Flipper shut him down. Got a 10-second clip, he sent it. Aaron at a coffee counter, voice low, hands moving fast. The flipper shaking his head, stepping back. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to show desperation. Enough to show continuing intent. I forwarded it to Ms. Price. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji, the first smile-like thing she'd ever sent me. On December 12th, I took a walk around the block. My neighborhood isn't fancy. Good people, old cars, kids learning to shovel snow the right way, and one clean line down the sidewalk first, then the rest. Life that matters, not life that brags. Halfway down the street, my phone rang. Landline transferring calls to my cell. Bank security, the voice said. There was an attempted withdrawal. $1,200. Tagged care. We declined per court order, and there it was. Proof that even after standing in front of a judge, even after hearing the truth out loud, Aaron still tried to reach into the wallet that fed him years ago and claimed he needed it more than the man who earned it. Thank you, I told the banker. My voice came out stronger than I felt. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stopped walking and looked at the bare trees creaking in the cold wind. Sometimes love rots. And you have to cut away rot if you want the tree to stand another season. December 16th came with a sky the color of cold steel and roads salted white. In the courtroom again. Same benches, same judge, same chairs, but this time I didn't clutch my folder. I rested it on my lap like a coat I didn't need anymore. Aaron arrived looking smaller, suit wrinkled, eyes tired, hope thin. He sat without looking at me. Good. Truth had already done its work. Ms. Price stood first. She entered new exhibits, the Thanksgiving selfie metadata, the door scratch photo from his attempted entry, the bank's stop payment form, and then she placed a printed screenshot on the table, a text from Aaron after the first hearing. You'll regret this. Simple. Potent. Poison disguised as sentiment. Judge Morales lifted the page. Read it and didn't sigh. She exhaled judgment. A son's job is not to frighten, she said. Voice steady but sharp. It is to protect or to step aside. Then she set her pen down. Order granted. Permanent revocation of POA. Full protective provisions in place. Property restrictions to ensure no sale, transfer, or listing without my consent. Court-approved oversight if caregiving needed in future. And the one that hit him hardest, Aaron to pay $4,800 in legal fees within 90 days. He flinched. His lawyer stiffened like he'd swallowed tinfoil. Judge Morales added one more line, almost gently. But iron lives under her tone. You cannot mislabel harm as love. Gavel fell. It sounded like a door closing, or maybe a door locking from the inside. Where I finally belonged safe again, Aaron looked at me then, not angry, empty, like he'd set a trap and fallen into it himself. Handed him a printed copy of the order. This isn't you losing a father, I told him. This is you losing the chance to sell one. It didn't burn him. It weighed him. Shame weighs more than guilt. It sinks deeper, lasts longer. He left without a word. I walked outside into cold air, sharp enough to feel clean. Lake wind cut through, but it didn't hurt. It reminded. That day I didn't win against my son. I won against the part of me that believed blood means trust. Sometimes love is real. Sometimes love is memory. But sometimes love is paperwork, dates, signatures, witnesses, because that's what survival looks like when trust dies. I got in my truck, turned the heater on, and whispered to the empty seat where Margaret once rode. I kept the house, love. And I kept myself. The world didn't cheer. Life doesn't work like that. But my heart beat steady. And that was applause enough. The days after the hearing felt strangely gentle, like the world was handing me my breath back one lungful at a time. The first morning home, I didn't check locks like a man hunted. I checked them like a man who owned his doors again. Brass gleamed under winter sun. Every click of those deadbolts felt like punctuation. Period, 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 on a sentence I'd spent months afraid to finish. I brewed coffee without shaking. I buttered toast without staring over my shoulder. It wasn't victory. Victory sounds loud. This was quieter. This was peace, the kind that doesn't make noise. It just settles in your bones like warm laundry coming out of the dryer. I walked out to the porch and listened to Margaret's chimes. I'd replaced them with the softer set she circled in a catalogue years ago. Said they sounded civilized, like a breeze through a library. They sang low. Steady notes that didn't rattle panic out of me the way the old ones had when the wind picked up. Healing sometimes looks like replacing sounds you can't bear with ones you can live with again. Inside, I opened the kitchen drawer where I kept my receipts, no longer as weapons but as a reminder. Paper doesn't lie, people do. And sometimes people you raised lie the worst because they know exactly where your hope lives. I pulled out the digital recorder and walked it across the street to Janelle's porch. She opened the door, saw it in my hand, and smiled. "Keep it," she said. "You earned the right to feel protected." I shook my head. "I'm keeping the written record." "That's enough." She didn't argue. She just touched my elbow the way nurses do when they know men don't always know how to thank people properly. "Proud of you," she whispered. The kind of thing Margaret used to say when I fixed the sink without calling a plumber. Later, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a check to Ms. Price, the remaining fees she hadn't already been awarded. I put it in the envelope and sealed it like sealing a chapter. She sent a handwritten note back 2 days later. "You did the hard part. You told the truth in order. Funny how the word can mean paperwork and peace at the same time. The pension hit my account on the 1st. That reliable $1,986 I earned across decades of steel and sweat. I bought a reinforced bedroom lock, not because I expected danger, but because I wanted the symbolism. A man should own the lock to the room he sleeps in. That should never have to be debated in a courthouse. I took time to walk through the house, really walk. Not pacing, not patrolling, just visiting my life. I ran my fingers along the scuff mark on the wall where Aaron once threw a Nerf ball and laughed when it bounced back into his face. I touched the notch in the kitchen table where Margaret's cast-iron skillet slipped once during Sunday breakfast and dented the wood. That notch felt deeper now, not damage, but history. That afternoon I dialed a number I'd written down weeks earlier. A counselor who worked with older men reclaiming independence after family betrayal. That's what the website said. Honest words, "I think I could use a little guidance," I told her. "You don't have to prove strength here," she said. "You just have to show up. Another kind of survival. She asked why I called. And I told her the truth as simply as I could. I love my son. But loving him can't mean losing myself. She said, "That's not failure. That's boundary." I closed my ledger book that night, not because the story was over, but because I didn't need to document every breath anymore. Survival had shifted into living again. Forgiveness may come someday. I don't know. But forgiveness isn't the same thing as unlocking a door. Not anymore. Whenever the wind hit the new chimes, I heard something like a promise. I stayed. I kept myself. And I didn't go quiet. January arrived with sharp air and a silence that didn't feel threatening anymore. Just honest, winter silence. Snow sat on the roof like a thick blanket, and the furnace hummed its steady reassurance. Peace isn't dramatic. It grows in small corners, like frost on a window, or trust in your own 2 feet again. On the 3rd day of the new year, a letter came from the county recorder. I sat at the kitchen table. Same chair, same view, but a different man sitting in it now, and opened it slowly. Hold placed on property. No deed transfer or listing without verified notarized consent of homeowner, typed, stamped, official. A single sheet of paper. But it felt like a shield. I set it next to my coffee and let myself breathe fully, without counting the seconds between each inhale, like I had done that night behind a locked door. Later that morning, a thin envelope arrived from Adult Protective Services, a pamphlet, a case manager's card, and a note written in careful handwriting. You did the right thing. Most people never speak up. A stranger's validation, unexpected and heavier than it looked. I slid the card into the side of my ledger folder, not because I thought I'd need it. Because once someone reaches out a hand, you don't forget the direction it came from. A week later, Reed's final invoice showed up. That's $780. Every frame worth it, I murmured as I wrote the check. He included a sticky note. He won't get far trying that again. Word's out. There are good people in this world. Quiet ones working behind curtains, while the loud ones break things. That same afternoon, my phone buzzed. Aaron's name flashed across the screen. Not calling, just a text, a photo first, a rehab info packet, his name written on the line. Then 4 words under it, doing this. For real, I stared at it a long time. Addiction, entitlement, desperation. They tangle together sometimes. I didn't type paragraphs. I didn't moralize. I wrote 1 word back. Good. And then I set the phone down, deliberately, like placing a fragile thing on a shelf where it can't hurt itself. Or me. A few days later, Uncle Rob and I drove to the lake. Frozen waves at the shoreline made the water look like shattered glass paused mid-breath. We didn't talk much. Men like us don't always need to. You kept the house, he finally said. My retirement, I answered. He nodded, hands tucked in his coat pockets, breath white in the cold. Proud of you, he said, quiet like a confession. Not everyone could do it. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. The lake was answering for me, icy, strong, still standing. That night I sat at my table with a pen and my will in front of me. The old version left the house to Aaron. My hand didn't shake as I crossed that line out. I rewrote my legacy. The house to a charitable housing trust. Income supporting veterans and widows. People who'd felt real loss. Who fought life instead of trying to shortcut it. Clause added, family may live here only if they meet rent responsibilities like any other tenant. Fair, boundaried, clean. I signed my name. It felt like turning a key in a lock, this time from the inside. I mailed Aaron a copy the next morning with 1 simple sentence, boundaries are doors that lock both ways. He didn't reply. He didn't need to. The lesson wasn't for him to accept. It was for me to keep. That evening I sat by the window with a cup of tea instead of fear. Snowflakes tapped gently against the pane. And for the first time in months, the sound didn't feel like someone trying to get in. It sounded like someone staying warm where they belonged. Inside. Safe. Home. Mine again. Properly mine. Late February came dressed in grey skies and the slow, stubborn thaw of an Ohio winter. The snowbanks shrank. The sidewalks reappeared. Life does that. Buries you for a while, then quietly digs you back out when you choose to stand. The protective order review was brief. A formality. Ms. Price told me, and Judge Morales signed off without a blink. Supervised visits only, she reaffirmed, arranged through counsel, legal language clean and final. Accountability etched in ink. A week later, on a Tuesday morning, 10:47 a.m., the mirror of the minute he used to call me every night, there was a knock at my door. Not pounding, not demanding, just a knock. The kind someone uses when they aren't sure they should be knocking at all. I didn't open immediately. I checked the window first. Old habits form fast when trust shatters. It was Aaron. He stood with his hands in his pockets, shoulders slumped the way boys do when they're waiting outside the principal's office. He looked younger than his 32 years, but not in the good way, in the way life had stripped something from him. I opened the door halfway, enough to see him clearly, not enough to invite confusion. "I brought this back," he said, holding out my old phone, the one he'd taken. The one he'd slipped into his hoodie like a man picking a pocket instead of stealing a lifeline. The screen had a new protector on it, shiny, neat, a quiet apology disguised as plastic. "Thank you," I said. He nodded, swallowed. "You didn't lose me, Dad." It wasn't arrogant this time. It wasn't defensive. It sounded like a man saying a line he wasn't sure he earned. I looked at him, really looked. The same face I once lifted onto my shoulders in the backyard. The same eyes that cried on the first day of kindergarten. The same hands that once brought me a crooked paper tie for Father's Day. And the same mouth that had looked me in the eye and lied, thinking love was a wallet he could open whenever he wanted. "I didn't lose you," I said quietly. "You gave me away." There it was. Not yelled, not weaponized. Just the truth, steady as a heartbeat. He winced like the air stung. And for a second his eyes glimmered, not with guilt, but with recognition. Sometimes the truth doesn't punish you. Sometimes it sits you down and makes you look at yourself. We stood there a moment, me on my porch, him on the cold step. The chimes Margaret chose whispered above us, a soft winter wind moving through them, reminding me of her steady judgment. Love holds, but it does not blind. "I'm trying," he whispered. "I hope so," I said. "Trying means something, but trying doesn't undo doing." He nodded again, smaller this time. If you ever want to talk, we will," I said, "when we can do it safely. When trust can stand on its own legs again." He didn't argue, didn't reach, didn't ask for keys or money or access. He just walked away slowly, shoulders hunched against the cold, hands still deep in his pockets, like he didn't trust them, not to take something they shouldn't. When he reached the sidewalk, he paused, turned slightly, and nodded once. Not as a son, not yet, but as a person acknowledging another person they hurt. I closed the door gently. Not slammed, gently. Not final, but firm. Inside, I poured myself a cup of coffee. It didn't taste like metal anymore. It tasted like heat and time, and a man who had protected his own life when no one else stepped up. I walked to the dresser and opened the manila folder labeled Nov Evidence. The green certified mail card sat on top, his messy signature from November, back when he thought power was possession, not permission. I slid it behind Margaret's photo, not to hide it, but to lay it to rest. Evidence becomes memory when you survive long enough to file it under the right name. That night, I didn't set 2 plates. I set one, and I kept it there for myself. Some victories aren't loud. Some justice isn't public. Sometimes justice is a quiet house, a locked door, a steady pulse. And the knowledge you didn't save your son by losing yourself. The world stayed still. The chimes moved. And in the calm after the storm, I whispered to the woman in the picture frame, "I didn't lose us. He just lost the shortcut. End."